Well, let's talk about fungi this Thursday. Mushrooms, to be exact. Multiple national publications and blogs are saying they're going to be growing in popularity this year. There are a number of reasons, including they're more eco-friendly to grow and package, but they're also a good substitution for meat, especially chicken. Taking an even closer look, they're easy to grow in a city like Buffalo. That goes in tandem with another trend expected, urban farming. Here's part one of my closer look at why.
You can always stop in and
set up at 37 Chandler Street in Buffalo is Flat 12 Mushrooms.
This retail space is a direct product of the pandemic.
But to get Robbie Giannotta here,
glad we mopped earlier,
we have to pick up his story here.
We've got two identical grow rooms. And what you'll see in here is a variety of mushrooms. Things like our lion's mane mushroom is right here.
It's actually making headlines. It's proven to help your brain and nervous system.
That's going to provide the building blocks to regrow the myelin sheath around your nerves, which is something that kind of deteriorates with old age. It deteriorates with a lot of degenerative nerve diseases.
The health benefits of mushrooms are certainly catching a lot of attention, but Flat 12 Mushrooms has been at the forefront of another growing trend, urban farming.
It's a movement that started with the field to fork movement, which 12 years ago-ish.
Since then, the interest has expanded from chefs to at-home cooking connoisseurs. Giannotta says there is just something about knowing where your food is coming from, how fresh it is, and who touches it.
We've kind of gone out and counted the minimum number of people that have to touch your oyster mushroom if you buy it at a grocery store is about 10.
Now there is some fungi fun that has taken Buffalo by storm that Giannotta says took them by surprise.
A lot of people are really interested in foraging these days. I think that's a side effect of the pandemic.
A fun fact, Flat 12 Mushrooms is actually certified by the state to buy and resell any foraged mushrooms. And that's on top of the roughly 600 pounds they harvest here each week, thanks to an expanding fascination people now have with the fungi.
Where people are just more interested in the nuance and the specifics of it, to understand more about the life cycle, appreciate the beauty of it. Ready to go?
Now, Flat 12 Mushrooms has a number of classes you can actually take. You can even take some mushrooms home to grow in those little bags that you saw. They say it's as simple as putting them on your counter. Information on all of that is over on our website. Now, in part two, take a closer look at mushrooms and urban farming and urban agriculture as a whole. I chat with a UB professor who shares some fascinating insights on how this could actually be the key to end food insecurity in Buffalo and beyond. And it turns out Buffalo has been ahead of the game in terms of urban agriculture, something you probably wouldn't think about considering we have winter.
Yes, right, but we are, and I'm wondering, those bags that you can take home, did any make their way to your home?
No, I do not have a green thumb. How do you not remember the whole tomato pepper debacle? Yeah. I did get some mushrooms, though, from them graciously to cook with, and honestly, the best mushrooms I've ever had in my life. You can really tell the difference between something that was just picked and only handled by like one or two people versus the 10 that you heard them talk about. So,
all right. Well,
highly suggested.
All right. There's your recommendation. Look forward to part two tomorrow.
Yes, it'll be interesting. Mushroom. It is defined as a fungal growth that typically takes the form of a domed cap on a stalk with gills on the underside of that cap. Could it be the food of the future? Perhaps the key to creating a more equitable food system? That might be a little overzealous, but mushrooms are forming quite an interesting trend. Here's part two of my closer look at mushrooms, adding in a little bit of urban farming. They come in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
We haven't heard reports of extensive mushroom cultivation, but I do know that interest is growing.
Samita Raja is a professor of urban and regional planning in the School of Architecture and Planning over at UB. She says there are a number of factors why the love for mushrooms is blooming.
Mushrooms you can actually cultivate for a longer time period, it can be done indoors.
King oysters.
Just like over at Flat 12 Mushrooms in Buffalo's Black Rock neighborhood, the urban farm is a success story. It's one of many, actually. Raja says the city is already rooted with 10 to 15 urban farms, and that doesn't include the hundreds of community gardens. Raja says Buffalo has been at the forefront of urban agriculture as a whole. And now it's a way of the future.
It is also an opportunity for income generation.
Urban agriculture can also be a weapon in the fight against food insecurity. Rogers says nearly 56,000 households in the Buffalo-Niagara region do not live within walking distance of a grocery store, and they don't have a personal vehicle. The pandemic has only exacerbated this issue. So using her team over at the Food Lab, they created this map as part of a project called Seeding Resilience. It's a community-led coalition that's seeking to strengthen the local food system in response to COVID-19. On this map are food resources across Buffalo.
Cities have always been places where people think they're the places for homes, they're the places for jobs, but I've never met a person who can live without food.
But Rogers says the key is us. We will have to take charge to create the farms and grow them into success.
So I think in the future, we are going to see a much more tighter integration of urban agriculture into our city's fabric.
Now, Grassroots Gardens of Western New York is actually hosting a workshop of mushroom growing because there is an interest that they are seeing come spring. We'll have their information over on our website if you want to sign up, as well as that map shown in the piece connecting you to those food resources available across the country. And of course, this is part 2. Part 1 aired yesterday. That is over on our website as well.
I love the fact you've got the indoor growing, because we know we have a limited growing season here. So if you can do it indoors, all of a sudden you're year round.
And that's what's so cool about mushrooms. I mean, obviously, Flat 12 has quite the expansive footprint. But like I said yesterday, their little bags of mushrooms are available to grow at your own house, on your counter. And again, they're so good.
That's the most important part right there.
It is, and they're super healthy. So yeah, that's that. Hopefully you learned something and are inspired to try out your green thumb in a new way. Now here's a question for you this Thursday. Can fungus clean up lead-contaminated soil? That is the very question researchers over at the University of Buffalo are trying to answer right now. They are in the beginning stages of this federally funded study. Here's a closer look inside the lab. It looks like your 7th grade science experiment, solids swirling in liquid, but this is actually phase 1 of groundbreaking research.
It has like a little bit of lead content in it, almost the same concentration as you would have it in the buffalo soil.
That could potentially save lives.
So I've started looking into mycelium like way back in 2018. It's a new biomaterial that's kind of coming up.
Mycelium, as Bertina Nallum explains, is the network of mushrooms' roots.
To form this brain-like network inside the soil, and they communicate with other trees, with the different species within the soil.
Mycelium also transfers oxygen and controls the toxicity of soil. Now, Buffalo is known for lead contamination. Nallum is conducting lab experiments to see if dried mycelium can be used as a tool for lead remediation.
In the structure of this material, can we design it, the growth process, the mechanical properties, so that we can deploy them as filtrants?
What they've seen so far has been promising.
White patches are lead deposits already.
So you can actually tell the mechanism.
Katasha Nakordas is the principal investigator of this project.
This is actually an example of a dried sheet that we will be using.
Through their experiments, they'll be looking at not only what the mycelium sheet should look like, but how feasible and practical they are. It's a 3-year, nearly $660,000 project funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Starting from the very basic questions and taking it out to policy.
Cordes says it's really not known across the board, the level of contamination in Buffalo soil. They just know it's a problem, and there's a growing movement of urban gardening. In short, a family could be poisoning itself without even knowing.
They can affect children when they play outside or when they eat vegetables that are raised in contaminated soil.
Now, the second part of this 4-phase project will move into a garden.
Right in here.
Enter Jeanette Konzakowski, the executive director of Grassroots Gardens, Western New York, to explain their role.
Be leading the community education efforts, and we will also be assisting with the actual growing and testing of the mycelium on the lot.
Next summer, Grassroots will plant the mycelium and grow spinach over it. The lead levels will then be tested following that growing season.
Spinach usually only takes about 60 days to come to maturity, so theoretically we could know within 60 days.
The results of all of this could be a game changer, not only for the city of Buffalo, but for the world. And the seeds are being planted right here in our own backyard.
Any other harsh techniques that are currently used for soil, like bleaching and others, I think this is it will be a very good step to go forward.
Well, now it's important we pass along some safety information. It is highly recommended you plant in raised garden beds, especially if you call the city of Buffalo home. If you need any help, Grassroots Gardens of Western New York is more than happy to help you out with that. They also have a number of classes coming up to get your green thumbs ready for spring. And you can also call the city at 311 for any questions concerning lead and lead poisoning.
In the last month or so, you have been on quite a mushroom
I know.
journey, learning a lot about them, but there's so many uses.
Yeah, and it wasn't intended either. It started with a simple blog post I read from New York Times, and then the wonderful folks over at UB just kept giving me all these fun story ideas, and this one, by far, is one of my favorites. It was so fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
So there we go. We'll keep you updated on, what comes out of it, and, like I said, it could be changing the world eventually in, 3 years from now when all this research is completed.
We'll keep watching.